Hello and welcome to this World of Tanks tutorial. My name is Maxwell and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the map Prokhorovka and the tactics you should use. So before we get into it properly, we'll take a quick look at the map and the best routes you should take and the likely camping spots of the enemy team and your team. So if we focus on the left flank to begin with, you can see at both ends you'll have the 7 or 8 times out of 10, that's where you'll find the enemy's artillery camping. Just in front of those will be the tank destroyers, and then the heavy tanks will generally move up that road, trying to keep in the trees for some cover there. On the right, more on the right-hand flank, I would say 2 out of 10 times you'll find some artillery camping in those 2 spots that we've identified there. The mediums of both sides will 9 times out of 10 attempt to take the hill, as the hill provides excellent fire positions and spotting positions for whichever side can hold it, and the heavy tanks and other tank destroyers will generally take up positions inside the town on the right flank there. For a scout tank, the best routes you should take are indicated by the blue and yellow lines. Where the lines stop is where you should try and take up a hiding position and do some spotting. The dotted line is then the route that you should then follow if you either get spotted or your flank gets cleared. And you may notice that the middle is almost entirely devoid of action, and that is because it is generally just a killing ground. If you get caught in the open there, you're most likely going to get killed unless you can find some good cover from enemy fire, which we will go into in more detail later. Okay, so we're going to start with spawning at base number 1, and we're going to do the right flank spotting. So what you want to do firstly is obviously head towards the right flank as quickly as possible. Now this first spot that we're going to cover you should only really use if you are in a very fast tank, so I would suggest either any of the Russian light tanks or possibly the Leopard or the VK2801 I believe it's called, as the American tanks generally don't have the speed to be able to reach here without getting spotted. Now what you're going to want to do is just keep heading up here, stick close to the right hand red line and take up a nice position in this bush just in front of us here. And what you're going to want to do is take up a nice position. Just remember to spin the camera around just to make sure that you are highlighted in white from all angles, meaning that you are stealthed, and you're just going to want to sit here. This is a fantastic spot because just there is where a lot of the enemy's tank destroyers will take up position, and this road here is where most of the enemy's heavy tanks will advance down. So you're in a fantastic position here to do some brilliant spotting for your own team and rack up some experience that way. Let your artillery, tank destroyers and heavier tanks take out the opposing team without them being able to spot you. Now before we go too further, what I do want to say is if you get spotted trying to get into this position, or you get about this far and you notice that none of your tanks are really coming down this flank, do not be afraid to basically turn tail and run away, because one lone scout up ahead is not going to make much difference in a battle. You need to go where you're most needed, so basically just retreat across the plains here and get to a better position. Now, once your flank's been cleared, it's time to proceed forward. I wouldn't recommend using this route here as an escape method. If you do get spotted and need to escape, I would use the route that was just displayed before this one. But when you're fairly certain that your flank has been cleared, you're going to want to proceed all the way down this flank. Try and use a little bit of zigzagging manoeuvres, because just over this hill here is generally where you can sometimes find some tank destroyers, and this is 8 out of 10 times where the enemy's artillery will be camped, is just around this area in these bushes here. If you do manage to rack yourself up a couple of kills, then it's time to turn left and head towards the enemy's base. If the artillery wasn't there, or there were no tank destroyers, then normally you'll find them amongst these bushes here. You can sometimes catch a tank destroyer off guard, coming in on his flank, or you can catch some SPGs unawares. Once you've managed to mop those up, then just swing in here and maybe try and start off a base capture for your team. Okay, now the next route we're going to talk about is the hill on the left hand flank. Now you only really want to take the hill if you're simply going up there to scout the hill for your medium tanks, because in a light tank you won't last very long against a pretty well skilled medium tank driver, or unless you're fairly near the top of the lists. Occasionally in a tier 4 light tank you will be ranked near the top of the battle, so then you're fairly safe to go and take the top of the hill yourself, as you will be able to be competitive against any tank that crests that rise. But 9 times out of 10 you're not going to be at the top of the table, so what you basically want to do is just make your way up the hill and try and take cover just over the crest in one of these bushes, so you can do some spotting of anybody else that comes over the hill. Now, the idea behind this is anybody who crests that hill, you basically want to just spot them so your artillery can take them out, or so that your medium tanks coming up behind you know how many of the enemy are trying to take the hill, and whether it's a good idea to continue on, just to basically get some advanced knowledge of what's about to come. Now, one of the techniques I sometimes like to do in this position is when you've taken up your position in the bush, if nobody's showing up, it might sometimes a good idea to rotate your tank around 180 degrees. And basically what this does is you're still stealth behind the bush, but if somebody does come over the hill and you've got absolutely no chance of being able to take them out, you can just basically spot them and then run down the hill. Basically, so it gives you that little bit of head start because you're already pointing the direction down the hill. And then what you can do is you can just keep peekabooing back over the top of the hill to keep spotting them and then reversing down the hill. Just gives you that added bit of survivability there. So once the hill's either been captured or no enemies decide to come up the hill, which does happen occasionally, what you want to do is just come down the other side. And what you want to do is basically just head around about to these bushes that I'm heading to here, because occasionally you can catch out a lone artillery piece, or you can flank a tank destroyer and get an easy kill there. Once you've made sure that this area is clear and there's nobody lurking in those bushes, you want to just come over the top of the train tracks here. Now be careful when cresting this hill, because normally you'll have somebody guarding that area, so you either want to come just poke your head over, or you want to come flying over. Either way is good. And just have a look around the bushes there. If you don't see anybody, then maybe start a base capture. The only problem with that is you're in a very exposed area here, so if there are any tank destroyers camping in those bushes just ahead there, then they will spot you trying to capture the base. So it's normally a good idea to leave the base capture to your medium or heavy tanks, and you just want to come up here and have a quick poke around in these bushes to make sure that there isn't a lurking tank destroyer. And now the final route we're going to cover spawning at base number 1 is more of a roaming and rushing technique, as opposed to sitting in a bush and spotting. We're only going to cover this technique once because it's generally the same for whether you spawn at base number 1 or base number 2. The geography of the land's a little bit different, but the basic premise is the same. The hills are in sort of roughly the same area. So basically what you want to do is you want to make a slight veer towards the right hand flank here. That's preference. You can make a slight veer to the left hand flank, but I find the right hand flank is a bit easier. You want to get over this first little crest here. You'll be in a little dip there, so you'll be rather safe from enemy fire, and just crest that hill there. And what you'll do is you'll catch out any enemy scouts which may be coming in the opposite direction, or any artillery pieces which are trying to get into an advanced position. You're going to basically head down this dip until enemy tanks start appearing ahead of you there, and you want to just cross over the bump there, which will provide cover from those tanks that you just spotted, but it won't provide cover from any tanks there. So you basically want to try and again get over the next bump as quickly as possible, as all of these little bumps in the geography provide cover from enemy fire. You try and keep as much speed as you can whilst doing this technique, but try and also keep in a more horizontal path, as moving directly away from the enemy will just provide them an easy target to get a kill on you. Now, as quickly as you can, get across the train tracks there and head through the village here using the buildings as cover. Now, you can either continue cutting down that path all the way back to your base, take a left over the train tracks and then rinse and repeat, or if you feel fairly confident of your own skills or that the enemy won't expect it, you can just simply spin round 360 degrees and pop straight back over the train tracks. And basically rinse and repeat. You want to do the same thing over again. Head down. These bushes will provide some cover, but not much to being spotted. You can generally catch any straggling base defenders, and again just keep heading over these bumps and using them as cover. You probably won't last very long doing this, but you will get some valuable intel on the enemy movements, how many tanks they're generally sending to each flank. If you're not under too heavy fire, obviously try and poke around in these bushes and try and locate the enemy's artillery pieces or tank destroyers.
Let's go!
So the first route we're going to look at when spawning at base number 2 is going to be the opposite flank, so the left-hand flank spotting method that we discussed first on spawning at base number 1. So what you're going to want to do is basically the same. You want to head to this left-hand flank and get to those bushes I was just looking at as quickly as possible. Now when moving forward on this flank, it's actually a little harder to get where you want to go. It's a little bit further away, so if you're not confident on your speed, you can go into those bushes there, just in front of you. But if you feel like you do have the speed to reach the area in time, then just go ahead and push forward for these bushes here. And what you want to do is just, as normal, take up a good stealth position inside these bushes. Always remember to spin your camera around and make sure you're stealth from all sides. The good thing about these set of bushes is it stealths you very well from the front, but also from the side, as they're on the right hand side there. So if anybody's just coming down the road having a bit poke ahead, chances are they won't spot you there, and your artillery and tank destroyers should be able to take them out pretty easily. So a very good spot here, but again you need a very fast tank to be able to reach it in time without getting spotted yourself. And just remember that if you do get spotted, don't try and push forwards, always just turn right, come down that slope and run away as fast as possible, like I'm demonstrating here. So remember, in a light tank you never want to reverse if you get into trouble, as reversing will spell certain death for you. What you want to do is just retreat, following this route here, get over these natural bumps in the terrain, and they will provide excellent cover from fire from the enemy. And then from there, decide on a different route. Now if you don't get spotted, and you're fairly certain that your flank has been cleared of any lingering enemy presence, then what you're going to want to do is just push forward as quickly as you can. Again, never try and use this as an escape route, because if there are heavy tanks or tank destroyers still lurking in this area, you're basically just heading directly towards them and offering them free kill. So what you want to do is stick pretty close to this left-hand line here and just head over this little bump here, because that 9 times out of 10 this is where you'll find the enemy's artillery will be hiding in a bush around here. Try not to crash into the edge of the map as I did there. But these bushes here is normally where you'll find the enemy's artillery, and these here is where you'll find a couple of tank destroyers lurking, so you may be able to catch those by surprise as you come over the hill. Now if the artillery isn't hidden there, you'll generally find they'll be around these buildings here, or sometimes they like to push forward into these little bushes here, so always have a quick poke around if you're not under serious heavy enemy fire. So the last route that I want to cover for spawning at base number 2 is going to be on the right flank, and it's going to be taking up a good position inside the little town. Now just as a note, I'm not going to cover taking the hill when spawning at base number 2, as it is fairly identical to taking the hill when spawning at base number 1, just in reverse. So what you're going to want to do is head up the right hand flank here and advance forwards towards the village. Now remember that there's a lot of heavy tanks come through the village, but generally they will, regardless of which side that you spawn from, you'll find that they'll push through on the left hand side rather than take up position staggered throughout the village. So what you want to do is get forward and take up a good position. Here is pretty good, as you will be stealthed from the front with those bushes, stealthed from the side by those bushes, and this building here will offer you good cover from the hill if your team doesn't manage to take the hill. Now what you want to do is just sit here for a while and spot the enemy coming over the train tracks there. You'll generally get a good sight on, and anybody taking up position through the village you will get a good sight on. Now once this has either been cleared or if you get spotted, and also this is the route you should take once the hill has been cleared, if you've decided to scout the hill for your team. So you want to push forward, just stick close to this lake here, as that'll put good distance between you and anybody lurking in those bushes on the left hand side there. Now just in front there, you'll sometimes catch a tank destroyer there or an artillery piece there hiding in the bushes, so if you do, make sure you can get a good quick kill there. Now if the area is clear, obviously pull in and try and get a base capture, but as said earlier, you'll generally get spotted in this map trying to do a base capture by yourself. So again, just try and push through here as fast as possible and find some lingering artillery pieces or tank destroyers. So, thank you very much for watching this World of Tanks map guide. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please don't forget to like or favourite it. And if you want, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more guides, tips and tutorials for World of Tanks in the future. Thank you very much for watching.